It was with an interview with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. I'm going to ask you, you're reading it right now, and all I can see is I'm looking at you shake your head.
Some of these. Well, can I get right into it, or do you want to?
I want to just tell you how we're going to handle it today. I have when USA Today did the interview, they did it in Washington, and they had a camera on a tripod. So I have audio of the whole interview, and I'll play that after 7. After our free money question at 7:35, I'll play that. But for now, we can talk about it. It's an interview. Now, we got into this last week because on the Fred Dicker show, the Congresswoman, unbecoming as it was, laid into Anthony Brindisi just after he became a candidate on an Albany radio show, and got into the whole the Italian thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was told she did the same thing on an interview in Syracuse. No, she's doing interviews on radio all over the place except for here.
Well, I'm glad you have the audio because then that way we kind of have an interview.
I just play the audio, and of course they don't. I got to tell you, she goes on that Fred Dicker show, and it's like this is the Albany show. It's like going on, you're on with the home team because he's all with her. It's unbelievable. What a joke.
That's funny.
This guy, what a joke this guy is because he doesn't ask a single, it's like he's campaigning for her. It's unbelievable. I mean,
that's a great line.
Right?
I think Hannity gives her more of a hard time than this guy.
This thing questioning on Anthony Brindisi going after his father's past is unbelievable. And I can only say, and I'll let you get into it because you're reading the story. The OD has it today, too. I can only say this is a very mean human being. And if you're someone who has only had a public contact with this woman, you have no idea. You wouldn't know it because the game face is on, and it's all smiling. It's all, lovey-dovey, and look at me. But if you've had personal dealings with this woman, she's a mean human being that will stop at nothing to better her own advancement. And this is a perfect example of it. It is this is one of the ugliest things I've seen ever come out of any local campaign. So, you're reading the story, Manaski.
Yeah, some of these quotes are.
And I loved, there's a part of the interview, and I'll get into this later. There's a part of the interview where she keeps saying that Anthony Brindisi won't talk about the issues. He's not going to allow this to be a campaign about the issues. Yet that's all. And you could be the biggest fan of Congresswoman Tenny in the world, and look at this objectively. All he has talked about is her record. I mean, he is the guy who is contesting her. She's the incumbent now. And all he has done is question her record. So she says, in the interview, she talks about how he doesn't want to talk about the issues at all. And then in the next breath, she's saying, and he's calling he's talking about my record and saying that questioning my votes and doing, well, that's policy. That's talking about your votes on policy, your votes on health care, your votes on the internet, your votes on those issues. That's policy. So you can't really say he doesn't want to talk about the issues because that's exactly what he's talking about. Anyway, I find it, I find it, you be the judge. The only thing I can tell you also is this is a year and a half before this election.
Mm.
A year. This isn't an election that's going to happen in November. This is going to happen a year from November. If we're this far into the weeds, we're not just in the weeds. We're dancing in the poison ivy right now. This is crazy.
What's that other plant there? That
the hogweed or whatever. Yeah, and you have no idea, and you're rolling in it. All right, what do you think?
Well, I guess maybe I guess I'm just surprised here. It says this is from the obviously the Observer Dispatch this morning. It says she tried to paint a contrast between maybe I'm paraphrasing, her family and Brindisi's family. My father fought for law and order.
Yeah.
Anthony's father represented some of the worst criminals in our community. And then the other one here was...
That's a very... First of all, as an attorney herself, that's terrible. Because think about that. As an attorney, attorneys represent people that are less than desirable all the time. But she goes further than that. She's really trying to basically say, she's trying to say, look at Anthony's ties to the mob. She's really trying to say that. Look at his ties to the mob. And of course, in her statements, his ties to the mob are his father, who she says is tied to the mob.
You have to question some of the things that have happened in his family. The voters make that decision. I'm not saying Anthony is part of any of that, but that's the family you come from.
That's nice. The family you come from. Imagine walking. I love at the end, though. She says, I like Anthony Brindisi. I like his family. He has a nice family. Talking about his immediate family. That's like walking up to somebody and punching him in the face and saying, no, I really like you. So the fact that I punched you should be okay because I like you. You're
no
a nice
offense.
person.
No offense, but you're ugly.
Yeah. Or I just it is
I am
mind-boggling.
Confused by that line. If she's going to make the accusation, I mean, I guess go ahead and make the accusation. But here's the part of the quote that confuses me. I'm not saying Anthony is part of any of that, but that's the family you come from. That's
and she
the
said
one I'm shaking my head about.
Many constituents have walked up to her and said, "I'm worried about his ties and the ties to his family. I'm worried." Many constituents have.
I'd love
told
to know
me
who
that.
those constituents are that said that.
The quote from the spokesperson. I don't see the name here for the spokesperson.
This is Claudia's spokesperson speaks in there in the story.
That was Claudia originally.
Yeah.
But this is the spokesperson.
The spokesperson gives a more political answer, but tries to cover for the. I mean, this is knowing Claudia. I don't think this is a strategy of the campaign. It's just Claudia's strategy. She's planning to get on this road. She's done it on three separate interviews in the last 2 weeks now.
Representative Tenney, this is the spokesperson. Representative Tenney simply mentioned what most people in the Utica area already know, and what the Utica Observer-Dispatch has already reported. Anthony Brindisi is feigning outrage about mention of his father's association with organized crime to distract voters from his ugly record of rubber-stamping Governor Cuomo's liberal agenda and corrupt policies, and the fact that he's been handpicked by Nancy Pelosi because he knows Brindisi will do the same thing in Washington.
Well, we know that Anthony Brindisi has not been a rubber stamp for Cuomo's policies. We've heard him on this program calling out the governor. But that's a more political answer. You'd expect that answer out of her campaign. You'd expect Claudia Tenney to come out and say Anthony Brindisi is a Democrat. He's a rubber stamp for Cuomo. You'd expect that, wouldn't you? And you wouldn't call that dirty politics. You'd say that's politics is normal. But going down the road of going after the family is just really crazy. And I do wonder too. In Utica and the Mohawk Valley, people know the history of what went down back in the 70s and 80s. And I do wonder, here, we might look at it differently. But what are the people in Binghamton and the people to the north and Oswego in that area, what are those people who don't really know it? And if they do go and Google the names and start seeing some of this stuff, does that work with those people? Is it effective for those people? I do kind of wonder.
Well,
if you're Italian, I would be offended today to the point where I'd be calling for her resignation. Imagine if Anthony Brindisi was a black man, and you began going after his father for something that was done by his father. Imagine if he was Jewish. Imagine if. Why is it okay to do this to Italians? I don't understand it. I'm not Italian, but if I were Italian, I would be offended to an extreme. This is your legislator. This is your congresswoman here. It's unbelievable.